Tonight, the pivotal moment in the war with Iran. President Trump says the U.S. has reached a deal. We press Vice President JD Vance on what exactly both sides have agreed to. The president on the world stage praising the tentative agreement to end the war. The details, though, still in dispute. As stocks soar, oil prices plummet. One-on-one tonight with the vice president. What he tells me is in that deal. And when nuclear inspectors will be allowed in, we ask him. Plus, how he says this deal is different from the one brokered by President Obama. We'll bring you that full interview. Also breaking tonight, the U.S. Air Force bomber crashing at a U.S. base. 8 people killed. A massive plume of smoke seen for miles. What happened moments after takeoff? Helicopter horror, a chopper plummeting to the ground. An American singer and social media star believed to be among the dead. What caused that deadly collision? Dangerous floods targeting millions. This car swept away. This highway overflowing. Water rushing over the median and debris sent flying. Our Bill Cairns, you know he's standing by. Losing weight but skipping the gym? The new study finding that people on GLP-1s are exercising less. He asked a specialist why this is happening. And the extremely rare copy of Super Mario Brothers sold for millions at auction. What makes it so unique? Plus, California Governor Gavin Newsom says the Justice Department is now investigating him and his wife. Why he blames President Trump. Top story starts right now. And good evening to Top Story on this Monday night. We want to start with the major announcement from President Trump. The U.S. and Iran reaching an agreement to end the war. The full terms of that agreement, though, yet to be revealed, with a formal signing set for Friday. So tonight, we press the Trump administration for some answers. The president tonight touching down in France for the G7 summit, touting this deal as he meets with allies on the world stage, but some of the specifics still in dispute. The president says the Strait of Hormuz will open as soon as Friday and without tolls, but Iran says it will still charge, quote, service fees to oil tankers. Also unclear the future of Iran's nuclear program. Tonight, you'll hear from a key player in the negotiations with Iran, Vice President JD Vance. In our one-on-one interview, we ask him if and when nuclear inspectors will be let back into Iran. Another big question tonight is Israel on board with what the U.S. has agreed to. Their war against Hezbollah in Lebanon has been a major sticking point for Iran, causing scenes of destruction just like these. What we're hearing tonight from Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu. And back here at home, news of this deal sending the market soaring. The Dow Jones hitting a record high today and oil prices plummeting as well. But after months of pain at the pump, will Americans feel the relief? We'll have the interview with the vice president in full in just a moment. But first, our Gabe Gutierrez is traveling with the president and leads us off.
Tonight, President Trump on the world stage at the G7 summit in France, touting what he sees as a diplomatic victory, a memorandum of understanding with the Iranian regime that begins to end the war, with Iran agreeing to allow oil tankers to go through the critical Strait of Hormuz.
I'm very happy to say it's signed, the deal's all signed, and the strait is already partially opened. On Friday, it'll be completely opened.
French President Emmanuel Macron praising the agreement.
And it's a very important one because first it will fix the nuclear issue.
A formal ceremony is now scheduled for Friday in Switzerland, likely attended by Vice President Vance.
We got along very well with Iran. It's a different set of leaders, as you know.
But some details are in dispute. While senior U.S. officials say the agreement means the Strait of Hormuz will be open without tolls, today Iran said it will charge service fees to oil tankers. Still, stocks are soaring to record highs and oil prices are plummeting, down to around $80 a barrel.
But we're getting close to the numbers we were before it all started. And the main thing is that Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. They fully agreed to that with strong policing powers.
The full agreement has not yet been made public. President Trump says it does not include money or sanctions relief for Iran. A senior U.S. official says that will only happen if the Iranian regime is willing to meet their commitments. This framework now sets up a 60-day window for more detailed talks over the future of Iran's nuclear program. Tonight, there are mounting questions about whether any ceasefire would hold in Lebanon, where Israel plans to keep forces as it fights Iranian-backed Hezbollah.
We do want to see if we can straighten out the Lebanon the Lebanon thing. So Hezbollah, we have to have a little talk with them.
Gabe Gutierrez joins us tonight live from Geneva. So, Gabe, we're still waiting for the full text of the deal to be made public, right?
Yes, that's right, Tom. Look, Vice President JD Vance says that the text is a page and a half, that it will be released Friday after that formal signing ceremony that we mentioned. Meanwhile, tomorrow at the G7 summit on the sidelines, President Trump is set to meet with key allies, key leaders of Qatar, the UAE, and Egypt, which have been, of course, heavily involved in these peace talks, Tom.
And then, Gabe, the U.S. entered the war alongside Israel, but in recent weeks, it seems President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu have not seen eye to eye. What are you hearing from Israel tonight?
Well, certainly, Prime Minister Netanyahu seems out of the loop at this point. Today, he held a press conference. He is facing immense domestic political backlash over this memorandum of understanding. And the Prime Minister said he didn't know what was in the text. And that is incredibly significant, Tom. You mentioned the relationship between Netanyahu and Trump just a few days ago during several interviews. The president saying that Netanyahu was a very difficult guy, used an expletive to describe him. And so, as we mentioned in our piece, there are significant questions about whether any ceasefire will hold in Lebanon. But at this point, the prime minister not expected here, of course, at the G7. I mentioned those other countries that the president is meeting with tomorrow. Tom.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez first. Gabe, we thank you for that. We're going to come back to you in just a moment. But first, our full conversation with Vice President JD Vance. We spoke earlier today about what exactly the U.S. and Iran have agreed to, how soon nuclear inspectors could be allowed into the country, and how this deal differs from the one brokered by the Obama administration. Here's that full interview. Mr. Vice President, we thank you for your time. You have said you've signed this agreement with Iran digitally. President Trump says the text will be released after Friday. If it's already signed, why not make it public now?
Well, there's some technical details to work out, not related to the text of the MOU itself, but the implementation. And we talked with the Iranians and consulted with a number of folks in the region, the Qataris and the Pakistanis, who were very helpful in mediating this particular deal. And that's when the president decided that he wanted to come out with it. We can talk, of course, about what's in the agreement, but the text will be released on Friday after the formal signing ceremony. And that really is just respecting the diplomatic sensitivities that helped bring this agreement together.
Let's talk about the Strait of Hormuz right now. Iran's foreign ministry is saying while it will not charge tolls, they will charge ship fees for navigation and other charges to use the strait. Is this allowed in the new deal?
Well, first of all, what the deal says is that for the 60 days that we're negotiating the final deal, there will be toll-free access in and out of the Strait of Hormuz. So it's very clear here that what some elements within Iran are going to say is they're going to try to emphasize or overemphasize certain benefits that the Iranians get while underemphasizing what the United States gets. They're also going to represent certain things in a way that's most favorable to them. I think we have to recognize that this is what happens in an agreement like this, but fundamentally our job as Americans in a democratic body is to tell the truth. And the truth is that the tolls will not be charged. The Strait of Hormuz will be open. And by the way, we're already seeing a substantial increase in toll-free traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. So I would judge this less by what the Iranians say and more by what's actually happening. And we see a massive increase already in oil that's coming out of the Strait of Hormuz, which is why the price is down from a high of over $120 to about $83 today.
But these fees for navigation, are those going to exist, or is this something that the Iranians are inventing?
You know, this is one of these things that the Iranians have talked about that we haven't discussed. Again, we expect access through the Straits of Hormuz to be toll-free. There was at one point a conversation where somebody said, well, what if a ship breaks down, and is it appropriate to charge a service fee if you have to tow a ship? That's a totally different conversation, and that may be what the Iranians are talking about. But again, we've been quite clear with them that we are not going to allow a system where ships are charged for transiting the Strait of Hormuz. We haven't seen any pushback to that. And again, I'd ask you to judge by the actions and not by the words. It may have been, you know, a random person who was trying to overemphasize the benefits of this agreement to the Iranians. What we're already seeing is a massive increase in toll-free traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. That's going to continue in the weeks to come. Will nuclear inspectors be allowed back in? Yes, absolutely. That's in fact one of the core parts of the agreement is that the IAEA and the United States are going to help Iran destroy the highly enriched stockpile, and that's something that's spelled out very clearly in the MOU. Now, here's an interesting just structural background point I think about this that's important for the American people to understand is there are a lot of contemplated benefits in this MOU for the Iranians. There's a complete transformation of their economy, there's sanctions relief, but all of these benefits only happen if the Iranians comply with their end of the bargain. We sort of set this up where we could reward the Iranians for good behavior, where if they do the things that they're promising, they destroy the enriched stockpile of uranium in consultation with others, they commit long-term to a verifiable pathway to where they're not going to have a nuclear weapon, they actually promote regional stability rather than funding regional terrorism. All these things happen, the Iranians get a lot of benefits out of this negotiation. But if none of those things happen, then the Iranians don't get any of those benefits. And that's really how we make them honest. This is an agreement fundamentally that I think is going to transform the Middle East, but it's built around verification.
I get that. Mr. Vice President, I do want to ask you, is there a date? Has a date been set on when inspectors will be allowed into Iran?
Well, that's one of the things we're going to talk about on Friday when everybody gets together, signs this agreement, and kicks off the technical negotiations. But our expectation is that there's actually, because there's broad agreement on this, there isn't a whole lot of disagreement on this particular issue. That should happen very quickly. And again, if the Iranians comply, benefits will flow to them. And that's what we hope to see. We want them to behave like a normal country. We want them to have a successful country, but only if they do what's necessary to commit long-term to not building a nuclear weapon.
I want to ask you about that. You mentioned this morning a $300 billion reconstruction fund that would be paid for by Gulf states to Iran, right? What specifically does Iran have to do to get that money?
Well, first of all, that's fundamentally between the Gulf states and Iran. What we have said is, again, that if the Iranians are behaving like a normal country and if they make their country investable, then the Gulf Arab states are going to may decide to invest in that country, invest in their infrastructure, invest in their incredible resources. But I think it's important, not a single dime of that money comes from the United States. And in order for Iran to get that benefit, they have to show the Gulf Arab states that they're behaving like a normal country. Again, the whole concept of this deal is that if Iran acts like a normal country, their economic relationship, both with the region, but the world, is going to be totally transformed. The President of the United States doesn't want just a deal on the nuclear as much as that's a win for the American people. He wants to see a transformed Middle East, which is what this deal will do so long as the Iranians comply. And if they don't, they won't get any of the benefits.
Mr. Vice President, you're speaking to the American people right now. I want to understand this in the simplest terms. What does Iran need to do before they can be rewarded? What do they have to do to get that money? Do they have to give up their enriched uranium?
Well, we're going to stagger it, right? So giving up the enriched stockpile of uranium, that's the thing that we have focused the most on. They will get benefits for doing that. The cessation of funding of terrorist organization, they will get benefits from that. Making their country investable, they will get benefits from that. So what this is set up as they perform their end of the bargain, then more and more benefits flow to them. If they do less, then less, potentially nothing flows to them, and that's the way that we've set it up. So we're going to figure out some of the details in these technical negotiations, but the basic principle is Iran behaves like a normal country. They get treated like a normal country with great benefits and prosperity accruing to the whole region.
This deal sounds familiar to some, including to President Obama, who said this in a new interview. I want to play it for you.
It is doubtful that any agreement that arises is going to be significantly different or a significant improvement from the deal that we had in the first place and had worked for a long stretch of time.
What do you say to the former president?
Well, first of all, I just think that's fundamentally not right. If you go back to the Obama JCPOA, what it did is it took an Iranian nuclear program that it accelerated, and it basically bribed the Iranians to stop that program. We're in a totally different position here. The Iranian nuclear program has been completely destroyed, and what we're saying is make the long-term commitment not to rebuild it, and you will get the benefits that come with that. There's a second major difference between the JCPOA and this Trump peace plan, and it's this. The Gulf Arab countries, the countries that have been threatened the most by the Iranian regime over the past 47 years, they hated the JCPOA because they felt that it empowered Iran to be a bad regional actor. Do you know what those same countries say about the Trump peace plan? They say that it's amazing because it transforms the Middle East in a way that makes them more peaceful and more prosperous. So I think the fact that Iran's closest neighbors see this agreement as turning over a new leaf when they saw the JCPOA as a disaster is, I think, the best sign that we have something that is fundamentally different here. We're not bribing the Iranians to do anything. What we're saying is your program has been destroyed. Make the serious commitment, the verifiable commitment that you're not going to rebuild it, and you can change your relationship with the United States forever.
Did the new Ayatollah sign off on this deal?
Well, of course, their system is very unusual, but yes, they can't make an agreement without at least the support or the buy-in of the leadership of their government. You know, our understanding of how their system works is that you have the IRGC, you have the political leadership, and of course you have the clerical folks who are led by the Ayatollah. Our understanding is that their system has buy-in, or they would not have signed this agreement as they did.
Finally, the president has had some sharp words for Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel. He's called him crazy, ungrateful, lacking judgment. He's used some expletives while saying that. And then you have Netanyahu today saying something very different about this agreement, saying that with or without an agreement, they're not going to change their posturing. Why did the U.S. and Israel get so sideways on this issue?
Well, I think fundamentally the United States, we have our interests. Israel's often a good partner. We also have aligned interests, but also sometimes we're going to disagree on issues from time to time. And I think that's totally reasonable. Even our closest allies, from the United Kingdom to Israel, we sometimes have disagreements. What the president has said, and he said it very clearly, is that we expect the region to comply with this agreement. We've got a lot of great buy-in from our Gulf Arab partners. We've got a great deal with the Iranians. We've obviously got to put
do you have buy-in from
more
Israel,
details
Mr. Vice
together
President,
to ensure they comply.
But do you have buy-in from Israel? Isn't that a critical player in all of this?
Well, what we know is that this agreement is going to make Israel safer. It's going to make the entire region safer. And what I've seen is a lot of misinformation about this agreement. I've seen it sometimes in the Iranian media. I've seen it sometimes in the Israeli media. We believe quite firmly that when the Israeli people understand what's in this agreement, they're going to see this as a pathway to a new Middle East, to peace and prosperity in that region. That's all we can really ask for. We feel quite confident the Israelis are going to be bought in on this agreement once we get a little further down the road.
Mr. Vice President, we thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Good night.
All right, we're going to have much more on what's happening with Iran, but we want to turn to an update now and some breaking news. 8 crew members killed in a B-52 crash in California. Officials are now speaking. Let's listen in.
Our thoughts and prayers are with the families of those that lost their loved ones. We're sending teams out to notify the next of kin right now as we speak, and those next of kin notifications will take place over the coming hours and remainder of the day. It was a B-52 that was on initial takeoff, supporting the radar modernization program, which is it was a local test sortie. It took off and immediately after takeoff crashed and burst into flames. Our team of first responders snapped into action and immediately cordoned off the area and took the appropriate action to start putting out the flames. While that was taking place, our base responded in kind to establish an emergency operations center and a wing operations center to ensure that the command and control of all base agencies and the response for the recovery effort was underway. After reviewing the footage of the crash, it was deemed that this was an unrecoverable crash and unsurvivable. At that point, we went into the notification process, and as I said before, that's taking place right now. I want to reiterate that our thoughts and prayers go out to the family members. This is a tragedy, and this is going to be the worst days of their lives. We understand that, and we want to keep them in our thoughts and prayers. At this point, we don't have any indication as to what the cause was of this. We won't be able to release that information, and we don't have an ability to get that anytime soon. Right now, we're going to stand up an interim safety board to do the initial gathering of the facts, and that will then lead to a safety investigation board, which will look into those root causes. Once that's complete, it takes about 30 days. Then it'll go into an accident investigation board, and then that will determine all of the information that we can release to the public and to the next of kin. That process can take upwards of 6 months, so we have to wait patiently while that process undergoes to ensure that we respect the process of doing full root cause analysis. This time I want to introduce my command chief, Chief Josh Scarlocken, to provide any words if you would like to.
Again, we wish absolute condolences for the family members, and again, thank our first responders who responded very bravely. Again, this is a tragedy. It's something that we never planned for, but we're always prepared for to respond, and we thank those involved as we work through this process.
I'll now open it up for questions.
Colonel, Sam Boyle with 23 NBC. The people on board, were they all military personnel? Were there any civilians?
It was Sam, was it?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for that question. This was a mixed crew. This was a mixed crew of military, government civilians, and government contractors supporting this test mission. Thank you for that question. Appreciate it.
Did you talk at all about the test mission?
No, we don't have the profile or any of that. It was a local test mission that was in execution according to their test plan. That will be made public later.
And can you talk at all about when that plane took off? How long did it in the air before it took off?
We can't talk about any of the details of the specifics of the aircraft. All of that's going to be analyzed by the Accident Investigation Board, and that information will come out after that.
Can you talk at all about how close to the Air Force Base was the crash?
The crash was totally contained within within Edwards Air Force Base on the runway. Ma'am, I appreciate that question. Right now, we're doing next of kin notifications, and we don't want to release any information about who these individuals are until their families know about it. We'll have that information 24 hours after next of kin notification takes place.
Sir, when was the last time that Edwards Air Force Base had a deadly accident?
I can't speak to the specifics of when that happened. I don't have that information available to me. It hasn't been within the last 3 years since I've been here.
How routine is it to have these test missions? Do they happen multiple times a month, a year?
Absolutely. Our test missions take place every day, multiple times a day.
This is the first time we've had an accident, tragic accident like this in at least 3 years.
That's correct.
Can you tell us what the scene on the ground is like right now? Is this a recovery mission?
Yes, ma'am. So the initial response is to ensure that we can get the fire out and that we cordon it off and make it a safe area for everybody, all of our first responders and anybody that might be coming up to the crash site. So that has already undergone. Now it is a recovery operation.
Okay, we've been listening to this news conference there at the Air Force Base in California on that B-52 that crashed. Liz Kreutz is outside the air base right now. And Liz, we're not learning a whole lot, just that the B-52 crashed right after takeoff, and unfortunately all 8 crew members on board have died, and they're in the process right now of notifying next of kin.
That's right, Tom. And as they said, this was not a survivable crash, meaning that 8 people have tragically died in what was a routine test mission. Edwards Air Force Base is about 100 miles northeast of Los Angeles. This is a place where these B-52s have been tested for years. It's one of the main places across the country where they do these tests on these aircraft. It's a legendary aircraft, been used for more than 70 years, being currently used in the war in the Middle East. It's just a tragic accident that happened today. We do not know the cause at this point. Tom, we did talk to some aviation experts. They were speculating, but they were saying the fact that the plane crashed so quickly after taking off without getting very high makes them think this could have been a flight control malfunction. But as you heard there in that press conference, the officials are saying it could be potentially a month before they're able to actually determine the cause.
Okay, Liz Kreutz for us. Liz, we thank you for your reporting on this. It was just a sad story. We're going to be back in a moment with much more on that deal with Iran and the divisions between President Trump and Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu. We're back now with our coverage of the agreement between the U.S. and Iran. I want to bring in our correspondents covering this around the world. Gabe Gutierrez is back with us from Geneva. Keir Simmons is in Doha, and Matt Bradley is in Tel Aviv. Gabe, I'm going to start with you. Vice President Vance told me that there's some new detail, right, that what he calls rewards for Iran will be staggered. Do we know what those rewards look like, what concessions the U.S. is using in these negotiations?
Well, look, Tom, senior U.S. officials are very careful not to call these concessions. They don't want this to be seen as pay to play. What they're trying to frame this as is giving Iran certain rewards for good behavior. But we can tell that the president is he's very sensitive to how this may come across. He has repeatedly railed against the Obama administration for what he saw as a bad deal, that he says that Obama just gave money to the Iranians. And even in the coverage now, the president just a few moments ago on social media posting that any suggestion that the U.S. is just paying Iran $300 million is just false. Now, the vice president and also senior U.S. officials have been saying now that there will be some sanctions relief. There will be some money for Iran, but they're very careful to talk about this being that it will be staggered, that it will only be used as a reward if Iran fulfills its commitments, Tom.
Here, let's get to the Iran part of this, right? Because I pressed the vice president about the Iranian foreign ministry saying they will still charge fees, navigation fees, whatever they want to call it, for ships in the Strait. The U.S. doesn't want to call it a toll. What else are they saying about the terms of this deal with the U.S.?
Well, various Iranian officials and sources, media, have been suggesting that they will be able to charge something. And I think it was notable when you were talking to the vice president there, Tom, that he didn't dismiss that. He said that there would not be tolls or fees for 60 days. After that, he seemed to kind of be uncertain, or at least fudge what it would be called, whether there would be some kind of charge. And I think you heard that on multiple fronts with the vice president. And it's very difficult to check because, as you put to him at the beginning of that interview, Tom, we don't know what the document actually says. And it looks like we won't see it until Friday. Certainly, just on another point, the Iranians are saying that they will not have to remove their nuclear program. And again, the vice president suggesting that there will be inspections, but it's not clear exactly what the plan is. And frankly, that there are going to be negotiations over that. And then I think when it comes just to the money side of things, the Iranians are saying that they are going to get money. And the vice president suggesting only if Iran is a normal country, but not really saying what that means. And you pressed him many times to explain what a normal country is in his thinking. There was there, any mention of democracy or the people who were protesting earlier this year, and whether being a normal country for Iran would mean giving them their rights and them the power to choose their government.
Matt, I try to get to the Israel portion of this with the vice president. He was being very diplomatic, but clearly there's a lot of daylight right now between Israel and the U.S., and there had not been since the start of this war. What will happen with Israel? Because it sounds like the president is incredibly frustrated with Benjamin Netanyahu. There's an election upcoming right now, a lot of pressure on Netanyahu, and they still have the power, really, to sort of blow up this entire deal.
That's right, and the Israelis can do it just by continuing to fight Hezbollah or even continuing to defend themselves against Hezbollah. And I got to tell you, you mentioned there's a lack of diplomacy. He was being diplomatic, but there was a big missing part here in this deal. There's a big Israel-shaped hole in a lot of these arrangements. The Israelis were not part of these negotiations. They acknowledged that. And Benjamin Netanyahu 24 hours after this deal was announced, he still hadn't really addressed his public. And he did so tonight. He offered a full-throated defense of a deal that he acknowledged in his speech he has not even reviewed. So Israel, one of the main stakeholders in this fight, which went to war against Iran with America on February 28th, they now have almost zero traction into what actually happens. But as you mentioned, they could still totally destroy the deal just by continuing to fight against Hezbollah. This has really been a deal breaker multiple times in the past. The Iranians have shown that they are willing to pick a fight with Israel in order to defend Hezbollah, their main proxy, their main cat's paw against Israel. They will invite Israeli retaliation if it means defending Hezbollah. And that is a very dangerous and inflammatory moment. But look, the fact is, this deal here, Tom, it has landed with a thud in Israel. The Israeli prime minister has long boasted that he and he alone can extract concessions from American presidents. He can get Western governments to do what's best for Israel. And now, the optics around this are absolutely terrible for the prime minister. It doesn't look as though he can get concessions. There are allies and rivals of the prime minister demanding that he stand up to President Trump and push ahead to fight Hezbollah until the last man. He has not been able to do that. He has not shown that he will be able to confront the president.
Here, I do want to ask you about the nuclear inspections. The vice president telling me and breaking some news there that they will have nuclear inspectors. They will be there immediately. This is what led to all of this. This is what led to the first invasion attack, I should say, on Iran. How do you think the Iranians are going to deal with this?
Well, the Iranians have agreed in the past to have nuclear inspections, particularly, for example, after the Obama deal, for example. There's a fundamental thing here, Tom, that divides across the world, and that is, do you think that the Iranian regime can change, or is it the same regime that we've known over years and decades?
All right, Keir Simmons for us. We thank our panel tonight, guys. Great work out there covering the world and covering this war. We're going to bring it back home here to the States. California's Democratic Governor, Gavin Newsom, is making some new allegations, some big ones against President Trump, saying the Justice Department is investigating him and his wife because he might run for president. Kelly O'Donnell has the very latest for us. Kelly?
Good evening, Tom. It was Governor Gavin Newsom himself who made this public today in a video post, lengthy one, where he described himself as now being part of the president's so-called hit list. He also referred to other prominent figures who have been targeted by this DOJ. James Comey, the former FBI director, Letitia James, the attorney general in New York, just to name a few. Now, Newsom is, of course, a frequent Trump critic, and he's a potential Democratic presidential candidate. And he says that's what has brought him into this. Now, the Department of Justice declined comment. Multiple sources who say they are familiar with the federal probe that's ongoing tell us there are investigations underway that arose from whistleblowers and state government in California and did not originate here in Washington at what's known as Main Justice. Those sources also say the focus is on the governor's wife, Jennifer Newsom. She's a documentary filmmaker. She's associated with a couple of nonprofit organizations. And that this involves tax-related issues. Also a senior staff member of the governor, but not Governor Newsom himself. However, the governor's office calls this a fishing expedition. They also say they believe IRS and FBI investigators have obtained personal, financial, and banking records that are, to some degree, focused on the family and Jen Newsom and her nonprofit work. They say this has become a very personal investigation, and they want to fully cooperate. The governor says he has done nothing wrong, and today, Todd Blanche, who is the acting attorney general, he was also questioned by reporters, and he declined comment. Tom?
Okay, Kelly O'Donnell. Kelly, thank you. Still ahead tonight, the new study looking at the impact GLP-1s are having on exercise, why people taking the popular drugs are working out less. Plus, the new high score at auction for a copy of Super Mario Brothers, why this one sold for $1 million. We're back down with the dangerous flash flooding threat unfolding at this hour. Millions across the Gulf on high alert for scenes like this one. Look at this. A car swept down a highway in Waco, Texas, and first responders battling violent floodwaters to get to trapped drivers, and the danger is far from over. I want to get to meteorologist Bill Cairns right now. Bill, I can see that map just over your shoulder right now. Does not look good for the Gulf Coast.
It's the first tropical threat of the season. This does not mean we're going to have a hurricane. The tropical threat can mean just an immense amount of rainfall. We're already seeing that, and the system hasn't even formed yet. And if it does form, we'll probably get even more rainfall out of this, too. So as far as the Hurricane Center goes, they're saying there's a 50% chance that this is going to develop into what we call like a short-lived tropical system. It'd be right along the Texas coast, possibly heading up towards Louisiana. It won't be over water long enough to get strong. So we don't have to worry about storm surge, don't have to worry about wind damage. This is a rain forecast. We've already have a very humid tropical air mass in place. You saw the pictures from earlier today. We're going to get that day after day for at least through Thursday, maybe even into Friday. So that's why we have flood watches that go up from South Texas now all the way to New Orleans. Mississippi's joining into this. It wouldn't surprise me if we had even Alabama tomorrow. So how much rain are we talking? Isolated areas will get well over a foot. It does look like we're going to see widespread, at least a half a foot of rain. And if we get this in a short period of time, we're going to have flooding problems. It was very dry. We had drought conditions throughout this region, but this amount of rain is going to cause problems. Notice that we're already thinking, everyone knows Houston. Houston, it pours. 5 inches of rain is a big problem. So we'll deal with that this week. We also have to worry about, as we get through Wednesday, Chicago, St. Louis. This sounds familiar. Same areas of last week, too. Towards Indianapolis, we have a chance for severe storms, and not only severe storms, a possibility of even strong tornadoes. And then on Friday, this mess makes its way to the East Coast for once again, heading into the weekend. Airports, travel, roads are going to be a problem as we go into Thursday. Friday, it looks like it'll linger in areas of the southeast. So again, Tom, all eyes on the tropics. This could be our first A-name storm, but it doesn't even matter because the winds will never be an issue with this. It's all about how much rain we get.
We will keep our eyes for everything else you said there. All right, Bill, we thank you for that. Okay, time now for Top Stories Newsfeed and the production companies behind Love Island USA announcing one of the show's executive producers unexpectedly died during the show's production in Fiji. ITV American and Peacock announced the death of James Barker today. The companies say he experienced a, quote, unexpected medical emergency. Barker had worked on the show for 3 seasons. He was only 40 years old. And in New Jersey, the search is on for a suspect who hit an ICE agent during a traffic stop in New Jersey. The ICE officer was trying to capture a suspect when the suspect drove away, hitting the agent. The agent then fired his weapon, hitting the car, according to our NBC station in Philadelphia. The ICE agent right now is expected to recover from his injuries, and the FBI is investigating the incident altogether. The teenager accused of killing his stepsister on a Carnival cruise ship has been detained. A federal judge ordering 16-year-old Timothy Hudson, you see him here, to be held in custody after he was previously released on bail. Hudson is now going to be tried as an adult for the alleged murder of his 18-year-old stepsister, Anna Kepner, in November of last year. The judge saying Hudson, quote, presents a danger to himself and to others. And a new high score for a copy of Super Mario Bros. For the original Nintendo Entertainment System. A sealed in-box copy of the game just sold for $3 million at auction. This copy of the game is sealed with a glossy sticker that was only used for limited printings of the game. The $3 million price tag is $1 million more than the last sale of the game in 2021. Got a Top Stories health check and a new study about GLP-1s that caught our eye. The Endocrine Society found that people taking weight loss drugs like Ozempic actually started exercising less, not more, raising concerns about muscle loss and long-term health effects. On average, participants' daily steps fell from about 5,000 to just 4,400, and moderate to vigorous physical activity dropped from 28 minutes to 22 minutes per day. All of this was tracked on their Fitbits. To break down these findings, Dr. Holly Lofton joins us now. She's the director of NYU Langone's Medical Weight Management Program. Dr. Lofton, thanks for being here. So explain why we're seeing this with some people taking GLP-1s. Is this something that you're seeing?
Well, we have to look at the study specifically and realize that it looked at activity patterns, but not muscle loss. So I do see patients maintain their activity, and some patients do increase and decrease their activity. So it can go either way.
For the people that aren't exercising that this study found, what do you think is going on?
Well, I think that when people want to lose weight, they're encouraged to eat as little as you can and exercise as much as you can. But with the GLP-1s having so much significant fat loss, they find they can exercise less and still get results. So they may not do as much activity as they previously did.
So we've done a lot of segments here about GLP-1s, and one of the things that we've learned, and this has been a lot of research, you do lose some muscle mass, right? You lose, I think, some bone density as well. Does that come from a lack of exercise, or is that just how the drug works?
We have to remember that the fat mass is the majority of the weight loss. So we're losing fat, some muscle.
But don't you lose muscle before you lose fat? Isn't that
you lose fat primarily, actually.
Okay.
So they did some analysis looking at people taking medicines like Wegovy and Ozempic, and they found that the greater fat mass and the less muscle mass loss actually makes patients more muscular than when they started, by 3%.
Okay. So what do you say to people that say it sometimes doesn't look like that when people go on Ozempic and sort of their bodies start to change?
Well, I can understand why they feel that way, because within the muscle belly, there's fat there too. So the muscle looks smaller because they're losing the fat within the muscle, as well as the fat under their skin.
Now, what does that have to do with strength? Do you lose strength through that process?
Well, your strength depends on your activity. So if you're doing the resistance training, lifting weights, that is what can increase your strength or keep it the same. If you're really not moving your muscles, you can definitely lose strength.
Does dosage matter when it comes to exercise? I mean, and muscle mass? Dosage of the drug?
The dosages are managed to help patients lose fat. So with more fat mass loss, there will be more muscle mass loss. But you can maintain muscle by moving them.
What about the, we've done some stories about the Ozempic personality, where people just, they feel meh about anything, whether it be gambling or smoking, which are the good ones, where you don't have these vices anymore. But also just about, we did a story recently about somebody who loves the Chicago Cubs, and now he doesn't love going to games as much anymore. People have talked about this about exercise as well. Is that something that you're finding as well? Sometimes people's, motivation to maybe hit the gym is just not there anymore.
I personally find in my patients that they are more motivated because they're losing 30, 50 pounds, and they find that moving is easier, whether it's walking in the park or lifting weights. But they can have some what we call anhedonia about various things.
Talk to me about that. What does that mean?
Anhedonia means lack of enjoyment of various things.
Okay.
And that can be a side effect that's worth discussing with your prescriber to lower the dosage. I definitely had a few patients, not a lot, maybe 1% experience this, and we lower their medication. If we need to, we discontinue.
And that would include, because some people obviously get pleasure and enjoyment from going to the gym?
Yes, it definitely could include that as well.
And so that happens at times to people?
For some people. Most of my patients actually really enjoy their exercise more, though.
So, I know. It's all very positive. I do want to ask you, what would you say to people? Do you recommend they stay exercising if they've lost a lot of weight? Or, hey, if you're thin, you're losing the weight, you don't need to exercise anymore?
We have to remember that diet and exercise are the facets of weight loss, and the medication helps maximize your outcomes, both with weight, getting your medical conditions under control, and maintaining your muscle. So there's the behavioral patterns that really make people either maintain muscle mass or lose it, and that's what's important.
With people that are on it, should they increase protein or carbohydrates since they are losing so much weight? What do you usually recommend? If they're still, working out and lifting or doing a HIIT kind of program?
Your protein intake should really be based on your activity level as well as your weight. And when you're losing weight, you actually need less protein intake. So generally, I tell people to eat half their weight in pounds and that number of grams of protein a day.
Okay, so if you weigh 150 grams of protein is good for that person if they're on the GLP-1. All right, Dr. Laughlin, thanks so much. We learned a lot. We appreciate it. Thanks, you.
Tom.
Yeah. Okay, just ahead, an American singer and social media star believed to have been killed in a helicopter crash in Brazil. The devastating news and the investigation underway into why those two helicopters collided. Plus, Russia's attack on a World Heritage Site in Ukraine involving the Christian church. We'll show you the massive fire it sparked. That's next. We're back now with a tragic helicopter accident. Two choppers colliding midair, killing 6 people. American social media star and singer Oliver Tree believed to be among the dead. George Solis has the latest.
The dramatic and deadly descent captured on security camera. This footage, according to Brazilian first responders, showing the harrowing moments one chopper plummeted to the ground after colliding with another helicopter over Rio de Janeiro. Flames and plumes of black smoke pouring into the sky. There was a huge boom, this woman says. This man says he saw one chopper on fire and a man jumping out of another. The Rio Fire Department reporting 6 people found dead. American singer and comedian Oliver Tree among the list of passengers, according to police, though they have not been able to identify any of the bodies yet. Tree was in Rio as part of his solo world tour. The artist was known for his eccentric style and absurdist internet humor, with almost 20 million followers on TikTok. His biggest hit on the platform, 2021's Life Goes On, which has been used in more than 3 million videos. Tonight, an outpouring of tributes for the singer across social media from friends and fellow artists.
Tonight, multiple Brazilian authorities, including the Civil Aviation Agency, continue their investigation into the crash. Meanwhile, Tree, in a recent interview, said that in the event of his death, he wanted to donate his wealth to struggling artists through his foundation. Tom?
George Solis, our thanks to you. Now to Top Stories Global Watch and a check of what else is happening around the world. We want to start in Norway, where the stepson of the crown prince was found guilty of rape. 29-year-old Marius Borgobi, convicted on 2 of the 4 counts of rape he was acquitted of the other 2. He's been sentenced to serve 4 years in prison now. This is the latest scandal to rock the royal family after Norway's crown princess was linked to Jeffrey Epstein in files released by the DOJ. A new round of deadly Russian attacks on Ukraine, sparking a fire at a World Heritage Site. Video shows the centuries-old monastery in Kyiv up in flames. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky called the strike one of Russia's most serious crimes against Christian culture to date. Russia's defense ministry has denied responsibility. And the UK announcing a social media ban for children under 16. The proposal will bar children from popular platforms including TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, and others. Prime Minister Keir Starmer says he plans to bring the regulations to Parliament before Christmas. It comes after a similar ban went into effect in Australia. The British government says the apps compromise the safety of children. Okay, back here at home to the protest over the constant drone of drones. Residents in Texas say Amazon's high-tech delivery fleet is creating a nuisance, flying too low and making too much noise. Our Emily Aketa has a closer look.
That inescapable hum isn't a plane, train, or car. It's Amazon's delivery drones, which tonight are the source of mounting concerns from some communities across the country.
I can hear them even in my home when I'm inside with the TV on.
Richardson, Texas is one of 9 cities where Amazon's up to 83-pound drones lift off from, traveling as far as 7.5 miles for deliveries marketed as ultra-fast, safe, and convenient. But their flight paths have neighbors calling it a highway of drones, claiming they fly too low, too loud, and that there are too many.
They have been sometimes flying over my home every 3 to 5 minutes.
Earlier this year, one resident captured a drone crashing into her apartment building.
That does not sound good.
And smoking outside her window. While others have criticized the tech as heavy-handed, dropping this package near a running dog. Amazon warns on its website for shoppers to keep pets away from the selected delivery point. The retail giant also says their new drones at less than 70 decibels are no louder than a delivery van passing by, and tells us they have increased flight altitudes as well as adjusted flight paths to reduce impact on residential areas. Amazon, Walmart, and DoorDash are all expanding drone service to more cities by next year, as some residents hope their concerns aren't drowned out in the high-speed delivery race.
Amazon also says the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive to the delivery drones, which fly between 200 and 400 feet. The FAA, by the way, requires commercial drones to fly under 400 feet and carry packages no more than 5 pounds. Tom?
We thank you for watching Top Story. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. Stay right there. More news on the way. We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.